This podcast includes information provided by the issuer and does not express the views of the interviewer. This podcast may also include forward-looking statements by the issuer that involve certain risks and uncertainties to its business. Because forward-looking statements are subject to risks and uncertainties, the issuer's actual results could differ from those indicated in this podcast. Welcome to the Planet MicroCap podcast. I'm your host, Robert Kraft, and thank you all so much for the support and for tuning in. You can follow Planet MicroCap on Twitter at Bobby K. Kraft. That's BOBBYKKRAFT, and you're listening to episode 63. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to tweet at me or shoot me an email at rkraft@snnwire.com. And when you do get a chance, if you like what you hear, please rate and review Planet MicroCap on iTunes. It really helps provide feedback for me and spread the MicroCap message. For this episode of the Planet MicroCap podcast, I spoke with Philippe Belanger and Mathieu Martin, the president and vice president of Space Microcaps. I've known both Philippe and Mathieu for a few years now, having interviewed Philippe on here back in 2016, and I thought it was time to have both Mathieu and Philippe on the program to discuss their growth value investing philosophy. For those who don't know who or what Space Microcaps is, it is a website with the objective to share educational content on microcap investing and investment ideas with the focus almost exclusively on the Canadian microcap market. Philippe will also be participating on the Planet MicroCap podcast live panel at the Planet MicroCap Showcase 2018. The full list of panels and agenda are up now on www.planetmicrocapshowcase.com. The goal for this episode is to understand Space Microcap's growth value investing strategy and how they were able to leverage a hobby and turn it into a full-time job. Thank you again for tuning in to episode 63 of the Planet MicroCap podcast. Please enjoy my interview with Mathieu Martin and Philippe Belanger. But first, a word from our sponsor. To my loyal listeners, subscribers, and fans, Robert Kraft here, your host on the Planet MicroCap podcast. The 2018 Investor Conference season is upon us. Where are you going this year? I'd like to take a second to invite you to join me and some of the guests you may have heard on this podcast to our annual MicroCap Investor Conference, the Planet MicroCap Showcase, April 24 to 26, 2018 at the Planet Hollywood Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. The Planet MicroCap Showcase will be 2.5 days of company presentations, networking opportunities, an educational workshop, and you get to meet privately in one-on-one meetings with management of well-known public and private microcap companies. We are back with new surprises and programming that you will not want to miss. So join us for the Planet MicroCap Showcase, April 24 to 26, 2018 at the Planet Hollywood Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. For more information and register to attend, please visit www.planetmicrocapshowcase.com. See you in Vegas. For this episode of the Planet MicroCap podcast, I have Philippe Belanger and Mathieu Martin on the program. They are the president and vice president of Space Microcaps, www.espacemc.com. Philippe and Mathieu, welcome to the Planet MicroCap podcast.
Hi, Bobby. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks, Robert. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you guys on. And Philippe, you're welcome back. And Mathieu, welcome for your first time here.
Yeah, thanks.
It's great. So to get started here, let's get both of your backgrounds. And Mathieu, since you're the new guy on the block, Mathieu, the floor is yours.
All right. So basically, I guess I would say from a professional standpoint that I'm a self-learner. So I graduated from high school and then just decided to find some projects like entrepreneurial projects. So I had a lot of ideas. I started like small projects, businesses, and I was just looking for ways to make a living for myself without having a boss. And so at some point I ended up playing poker. So I discovered poker through a friend and just became really interested. Started studying the game, learning as much as I could. I read books, I took online classes, I had a coach. And so at some point, I was able to make a decent living playing poker. And so after a few years doing that, I was looking for ways to invest the money I had won at poker. And so that's how I got into microcap investing. And I guess I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I met Philippe through poker, and then that's how I got into investing. So that's pretty much it. I'll let Philippe introduce himself.
Yeah, so personally, I have a corporate finance background. I worked 2 years for an insurance company. It's actually a Dow 30 Travelers. Like Mathieu mentioned, we met through poker because when I was at school, I played online poker part-time and continued playing when I started working as a financial analyst for Travelers. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I don't know. I started investing in microcaps through one of my colleagues at Travelers. So that's my background.
Nice. So you guys are two poker buddies that teamed up to tackle the microcap space. I mean, I love it. I think Philippe, you've heard me say that before. I think it's so cool that like you have this risk mentality and you found a way to channel that into another passion. I mean that kind of actually leads into my next question. And that's how. And Philippe, you kind of alluded to this already. Is how did you both get your start investing in microcaps? I know Philippe, you were about to expound on that a little bit right there.
Yeah. I was already looking into like new ways to invest my money, and I like playing poker, but I was looking for like new challenges, and I just by luck, one of my colleagues at Travelers, Aaron Lanny, with who I actually started the Space Microcap community. He's now working for an asset management firm here in Montreal. So basically, it was annoying me with like stock market discussion at every lunch, and I was like, okay. After 6 months to listening to him, actually to not listening to him, I asked him, so okay, explain to me what exactly that you do. And he said, well, I invest in penny stocks, like microcap companies. Like, what's a microcap? Well, it's a small publicly traded company, and it's easy to invest in them. You just like open an account with a discount brokerage and you can buy shares. Like, oh, cool. And what's your strategy? And to me, like before that, I had actually no interest in the stock market. I was like, I don't want to stand in front of a computer looking at charts and day trading. It's not my style. So when he explained to me how he would actually do it, like research and deep due diligence on the companies that he's looking into, I was like, oh, okay, well, now I get it. Because as a poker player, it's always been, what's my edge? Like, what's my edge over the other players? Mm-hmm. But in the stock market, what's my edge over the other investors? What's my secret sauce that makes me a better investor than others? Mm-hmm. And I felt that I could get at least an informational edge by doing research on the company and going the extra step that others are not willing to go get the information and be very good at analyzing it.
Mm-hmm. So did you invest in a microcap, just after doing all that? Like for when you did your first dive into it and really start investing in it, did you like try out one of his ideas, or did you actually do the research?
Try out two of his ideas.
Okay, there you go.
Aaron was a very conservative guy, so we would like research them for, I don't know, like dozen hours, even like 100 hours, and basically pitched me his first two ideas, which were bioscience and expel technologies, and I actually, I was like, okay, well, sounds like a great investment opportunities. I'm gonna throw some money at them. So I didn't really do research. The first two stocks, I was like, I relied on what he told me, and I invested like a small amounts of money just to try it, and then started doing my own research and due diligence to see if his thesis was right. And so Aaron was like a mentor to me in making sure like I'm always been someone that if I think that even in the surface, I can get comfortable with very little info. Just like looking at, it looks like a good risk reward situation, so I can like buy a small position, and then I do more research. And if I like what I see, I buy more. So it's always been my style. I buy a little, do more research. Then if I like what I see, I buy a bunch more.
So Philippe, just real quick, are you still currently a shareholder in BioSign and Expel?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
It's 5 years ago. So
okay. Gotcha.
It's been like I've made money on both stocks, and I would guess if I have lost money, I'm not sure I would still be investing in MicroCap. So that's why I think I was lucky to meet Aaron, and lucky that my first two investments were that successful. But then I just tried to understand why those have been really good investment to me. Like what did they have that I can investing criteria that I can rely on to find the next ones.
Right.
Patterns that repeat themselves and can help predict investment returns.
Right.
Future investment returns.
Right. So Mathieu, when how did you come in to start investing in microcaps? Did you meet Philippe and Philippe pitched you, or how did you end up finding this space?
Yeah, exactly. So Philippe pitched me. We were on a poker trip to Florida, and when we came back, he started just telling me about what he was doing, investing in microcaps, and I got pretty interested because, like he said earlier, as a poker player, you want to have an edge on other players, and you want to find that situation where how you're gonna exploit the market. And so that's what I saw in microcaps. When he told me about it, I was like, oh, this makes sense to me. I think I could figure out how it works. And so pretty much the same thing. He told me two of his investment ideas. I bought both kind of blindly, and one went up right from the start, and so I was pretty hooked at that point, and I just started again like I did in poker. I just started learning, reading books, participating on online message boards, going to conferences, and I just dove right in it and never looked back. So I had a pretty decent success at first, and so at some point I decided to go full-time investing.
Nice. So Philippe, what have you guys been up to?
Well, since we last spoke when I was on the podcast 2 years ago, we grew the Space Microcaps community. So we have a pretty active community of microcap investors sharing ideas and research on our message board. Also, we started doing cocktails where we invite companies to present every 2 months. But the biggest news that we want to share with you, Bobby, is that we recently joined the Rivemont Investment as consultant to help them do all the research and analysis on microcap investment ideas for their new fund, the Rivemont MicroCap Fund.
Interesting. Tell me a little bit more, about the fund and how long have they been around?
Well, Rivemont has been founded in
2010.
2010, yeah. I wasn't sure, '09 or 10, but yeah, it was funded in 2010. They're an asset management firm here based in Montreal that has over $40 million in asset under management. And I know that they were looking in launching new alternative strategies. So about 6 months ago, we approached them and we said, well, I think you guys should launch a microcap fund, and we could like help you do it. We've been at this for over 5 years now, so we could be doing like the research, due diligence, and analysis of the microcaps, and then our role is basically to source ideas and bring them so that they can take good investment decision for their investors.
Nice. So, Mathieu, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Well, maybe just the structure of the fund is an open-end fund.
So, actually, Mathieu, coming right back to you, what is your investment philosophy that you're looking to employ at Rebond? Or at least to advise them?
Yeah, well, actually, the goal is really to produce research and recommend ideas to the fund based on our personal strategy. So Philippe and I have been investing for 5 years, and we developed, I think, a pretty robust strategy that's been working for us, and we just want to follow the same, invest based on the same criteria. So basically, it's kind of simple. We're looking for growing companies, but at a bargain price. So usually it's something we've been successful with is finding companies that reach profitability. So usually they will trade at a pretty reasonable valuation because the market maybe wasn't anticipating that they'd reach profit in a specific quarter. And so so we focus on the margin of safety, like companies that have cash flows, that have a healthy balance sheet, long-term assets, intellectual property, barriers to entry. So those are, I guess, the things that a lot of people would look for, like very solid fundamental investment criteria. Mm-hmm. And maybe Philippe, you want to add something?
Well, I think the margin of safety is it's a concept that comes around often in finance, but that is really important. I mean, the first rule is to make sure that you protect your capital, and then with a given margin of safety, you want to optimize the potential return of your investments. So, and that brings us back to our poker background, where like every second we would have to make risk-reward decision, and I think this is kind of our expertise. Yeah, I mean, other people could probably do the research and in-depth due diligence that we do on the stocks. I mean, it's something, if you're willing to work hard, then it's something that can be copied. But I think our ability to assess risk-reward situation is what help us make good investment decision. So yeah, growing companies at a bargain price, margin of safety, very important to us. But an important aspect of our strategy is that we look for the smallest and most illiquid companies that we can invest in. I believe that there's money to be made on the liquidity premium. So invest in them where they're small, illiquid, and when the market discovered them, you then get the liquidity to exit or buy more, actually, if you still believe in the long-term investment thesis. And one way to invest in illiquid companies is to participate in private placements, basically secondary offerings of publicly traded company. And within our network, we have a good deal flow. That's what we tell our investors. Like, if we know what's happening in our space when companies are looking to raise money, they know that in Montreal will be open to hear their story and see if there's an opportunity there. In other situation, it's us reaching out and say, well, I think you could probably use some growth capital. Can we sit and see what's doable? Because for us, private placement is a way to get the liquidity we need to invest, have a sizable position in the companies that we're looking at. So that's I would say, like, that's basically what we do. Of course, we look for like quality criteria, like insider ownership, margins. We like companies that have high gross margins. We want to see the margins trending in the right direction, increasing, so that, like, when we do it, when we look at the company, we have more an approach. We look at the numbers, but it's mostly like we assess the opportunity on quality criteria. One thing we like to see is operating leverage. So if you see expanding margins, probably this is a sign that the company has operating leverage. But where could that leverage get them? And this is how I think you find growing companies at a bargain price. The market is underappreciating the growth and the operating leverage of the company.
So one thing I wanted to follow up on in what you just said, Philippe, is this idea of risk versus reward. You know, and you went through quite a few things that you guys look at in a company, and I'm sure you have different measures for, this will be more risky at this level versus, it's only trading at this. Like, I think you guys know what I'm trying to say here, but, how did you, what I'm trying to get at is understanding more of, how do you feel comfortable with just understanding that, okay, these are the risks that we're willing to take in order to get this reward, because it seems like it's more of a natural ability as opposed to something you can quantify.
I'd say that, I mentioned the most important variable is your margin of safety, so the risk that you're taking on. And some people, they tend, like, if you're looking at a specific investment opportunity, you can list all the risk that you have identified, but some of them, you need to be able to live with them, because, like, can it really have a meaningful impact on what can happen in the future? And there's a function, like, of how much risk you're willing to take relative to the price you pay.
Right.
If you pay 25 times earnings, you have to be sure to that you have a good margin of safety. But if you pay 5 times earnings, there could be some airy things there that I'm paying 5 times. I can live with that, even though it's a more risky situation, or you have some difficulty to get a clear risk reward profile. Just the fact that you're buying it cheap means that there's more room for reward. So this is the way I see it. It's okay to look at risk, list the risk, and really understand what are the drivers of the company's success and the company's valuation. But then just focus on you have to focus on what's like the 2, 3, 5 important things that will decide if this will be a good investment or not. I've seen in the past people really focus on things that are it's not important. In the microcap space, it's really rare to find a stock that the perfect microcap stock doesn't exist. They always have something that you wish wasn't there, but it's there, and you have to live with it.
And I bet even with the most perfect one, the valuation will run up so high. Like, as soon as one person finds it, they'll be, oh, no one's in this one. Next thing you know.
And Robert, one thing I'd like to add also, speaking about risk, and maybe that's something we didn't really explain yet, but in order to mitigate risk when we invest in a company, we really do underground research and due diligence. So very rarely we will invest in a company before we have spoken to management. So we go to a lot of conferences during the year. If we haven't met management in a conference, then we'll just take the phone and call them. And also we try to call customers, suppliers, other investors in our network, industry experts. And so we try to get a very good picture of like what could go right, but also what could go wrong. And once we understand like the industry dynamics and like basically we just want to understand the company better than most investors in the market, and that allows us to make better decisions down the road if we need to sell or buy more, or I don't know, anything that happens, we're able to process the information more quickly and end up with a better decision.
Right. No, that's good. That's good to know. So Philippe, a question that I asked you when I first interviewed you early on was, but now for you both, is why do you guys exclusively invest in Canadian microcaps? And please correct me if anything has changed. So Mathieu, let's go right back to you on that one.
Yeah, so actually the Rivemont Microcap Fund is North American focused, so it can invest in Canadian and American stocks. So we're starting to look at the US market, but it's I would say it's not an area of focus, but if we find something interesting, well, we could recommend it to the portfolio manager. The reason for being mostly Canadian focused is because the Canadian markets are mostly resources focused. So I don't know what the actual numbers are right now, but I believe something like 2/3 of the Canadian companies are resources companies. So we feel like there's an opportunity for us to look at everything else, which is like technology companies, consumer goods, industrials. So all these companies that are listed on the TSX Venture, they don't get a lot of attention because nobody's looking at that market for these specific industries. And so we kind of realized that we could find very forgotten and misunderstood companies in that space.
By the way, what's going on in the Canadian market space? It's. I remember when I first did the interview with Philippe. There was like there's a core group, at least down here in the U.S. I feel that like has an idea of the opportunities up there, but I mean, with more and more quality names, being found and talked about amongst microcap circles. What do you guys see going on in the space? Are there, talk to me.
Well, like in the markets, there are cycles where equities are undervalued or overvalued, and I see a pendulum between like interest in Canadian microcaps versus American microcaps. I would say that when we spoke 2 years ago, there was still like it was the value microcaps in Canada were relatively unknown, but then some other investors they realized that and they started chasing opportunities in Canada. And at some point, I felt that there were better opportunities in the U.S. actually. Value microcaps trading at less than 10 times free cash flows or 10 times earnings. So for us, it's like we're not now with the fund, we're not exclusively investing in Canadian microcaps. We believe that we should be active in the markets that offer us the best opportunities, be it in Canada or in the U.S. So it's always just a matter of staying ahead of the crowd and with our investing criteria, looking at U.S. equities, Canadian equities, and where we can find the the best value for our money.
Mm-hmm. So where do you see the pendulum swinging right now? Is it, are you starting to look more US or focusing back in Canada?
Well, I would say 6 months to 12 months ago, Canadian microcaps were a bit overvalued. But then with all the craze in marijuana and blockchain stocks, we've been experiencing a correction in Canadian value microcaps, growth value microcaps here. So some of the names that I follow are 40%, 50%, even like 60% of their 52-week size. So again, Canadian microcaps are looking very interesting right now. As the US, I mean, it's I'm happy that we just launched the Rivemont MicroCap Fund. We launched a month ago. I think the timing is great. It's a good time to be hunting for undervalued stocks in the space right now, in Canada and in the US.
Nice. So Matthew, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I totally agree with Philippe said. We see a lot of opportunities right now, and personally, I mostly look at the Canadian market, and there are pretty good bargains right now. So it's a good time to have some cash to deploy.
Mm-hmm. So also, how would you guys say you would differentiate yourselves in terms of your microcap investing strategy compared to, let's say, some other investors in the space?
Yeah, so actually, I guess I will compare it to the traditional model. So when an asset management firm launches a fund, usually, I would say most of the time, the goal is just to raise as much assets as possible and collect a fixed management fee. And how we differentiate is that we're actually not looking to raise like very meaningful amounts of money because our strategy is limited. If you invest in companies with like under 10 million market cap, if you want enough liquidity to buy a decent sized position, you can't manage like 100 million or 200 million. And so we made the decision with Rivemont that the best strategy was to limit the assets at 25 million. And basically, we just want to do what nobody else is doing, which is investing in the smallest and most illiquid companies on the market. And I think that's where we differentiate the most because I haven't heard of anybody else doing that, like another fund doing that.
Interesting. Philippe, is there anything you wanted to tack on to that?
I would say I think we mentioned how as investors how we differentiate ourselves. I think we're hardworking analysts that are willing to go get the information to better understand the companies, their competitive environment, and what's driving value in their market. Then it's also our ability to assess risk-reward situation where we did it when we were a poker player. Now we did it with investment. I believe that I know it's difficult to quantify, but we were good at just like look at situation and see if it's a good fit for our strategy. Mm-hmm. So, and maybe another point. It's really our network, the network that we built. We have a good deal flow, so we know at least in Canada we're really connected. So we talk with other smart investors, with people from different industries to try to catch what are the trends and hear about new companies going public or companies that are having accelerating growth, and make sure that we stay ahead of the crowd, and we at least have a look at the company before the market discovers it.
Mm-hmm. So then, my next question then, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask, is, what experiences taught you both the most thus far in your investing career?
Losing money.
Hopefully not too much.
Yeah, I know it's kind of a classic in all interviews. Like, yeah, losing money, of course, but it's a good lesson. I would say that the best experiences I had was actually the people I met, in conferences, people that I met through message board, and we started like exchanging email ideas. I think that's an experience in itself. If you want to have success in the microcap space, you have to look at what others are doing, and maybe at more experienced investors, and learn from their own mistakes by asking them like a question about their strategy, and asking this specific question to more experienced and smart investors in our space. So to me, those were like my best experiences, like the sharing and meeting new people, sharing strategy ideas with them, and this is why we love to go at investment conference, and we will continue to do so. That would be like what I like, what I taught me the most, but what I like about what we do.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Mathieu? What experience taught you the most? And just let me know right now if it was the same, also losing money.
Yeah. Actually, it is losing money, but I can tell you more about it.
I didn't read his notes.
Yeah, so when I started investing, it was in the beginning of 2014, and like at first, like I said earlier, I was only invested in 2 stocks that Philippe recommended, and as I was learning, I was putting more money into my brokerage account and investing it myself, and it was really in the middle of a bull market, and so everything was going up, and I felt great. I felt like it was pretty easy to invest. And then came 2015, about mid 2015. I think it's when the oil crashed, and so the whole Canadian market started going down. And at that point, a lot of the companies that I owned went down a lot, because I had actually no margin of safety. I was just buying because I thought it was going up, but I at the time I didn't really know what I was doing. And so what that taught me is like to really consider the risk, and that's something I've been doing ever since that experience. Is every time I invest, I try to figure out like what's the downside risk, what could go wrong, and try to pay a fair price. And there are like, since then, there have been a lot of companies that I missed because I just felt like they were too expensive and they kept going up. But like, I'm okay with that. I prefer to just pay the right price, and so I guess more focused on the downside now.
Let me add something to that. So yeah, it's like losing money. It's a good experience, but then you learn how to trust your investment strategy, to trust the system that you build. I think we look at roughly like 15 quality criteria and some other stuff too, and we have to trust our system. So obviously at some point you see stocks that you like that are too expensive and are just keep going up and up and up, and the experience of losing money and to see other people losing money and like learn from their mistakes, then it helps you build the discipline to say no. I mean, I think in life you should say no often, like almost always. Then when you say yes, you know that it's a good opportunity for you. That it's okay. It fits my it fits in my system, and we should do it. So this is with time. I mean, I've been doing this for over 5 years. I think Mathieu 4 years. It's the discipline that we learn, like just to wait and wait and wait for the fat pitches.
So just to brief my audience real quick, Philippe's actually going to be joining me on our Planet MicroCap podcast live panel at the Planet MicroCap Showcase in Vegas, April 24th through 26th. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. And, Philippe, we're really excited to have you on that panel. But, I have a totally out there question that has really nothing to do with investing. But, we've developed a friendship at this point. I've known you guys for a couple of years now. If you weren't in the investing game or even in the poker game, what occupation do you guys see yourselves doing?
Well, that's a very good question. Honestly, like what I do is I love to just reflect on things. In business, just think at new ideas, business models. I like to read on new trends and see what's happening in the technology space, and I read about economy, politics. In my ideal world, I don't know, be sipping a Corona in the South and just like reading books and thinking about how we could improve. I don't know, I wouldn't be. I like to be like in the action, so I don't think I would like be spending too much time in the sun. But I just like to reflect on things and.
So you would be a philosopher or a Twitter troll, basically. Oh, that's funny. So cool. What about Matthew? What about you?
Yeah, well, I guess I would be an entrepreneur, but I don't know. Like right now, I don't have time to think about startup ideas. But it's always something that I've done since I've been very young. Always looking for opportunities to actually be my own boss. I don't like having a boss. So I guess I would just find a problem and build a solution for it and just build a business.
Yeah, so basically I would be an advisor to a startup. That's what I would help him like identify the problem, and I would just think and give him some good ideas. I like ideas, but I know that I've tried in the past actually to launch a startup, and I just know that I'm not a doer, I'm a thinker. So I would be an advisor to startup companies, or maybe outside of the business world, but this is what I would do. And yeah, I would help Mathieu become a successful entrepreneur.
Man, you guys have it's the perfect partnership.
Oh yeah.
Nice. So then, one of my questions I like to close out on is, what is your advice then for new microcap investors looking at this space? Philippe, let's start with you, and then Matthew.
Well, I'm reading Matthew's notes here.
No,
they're not fair. Matthew, you go.
Well, actually, I would say I would say don't follow others blindly and do your own research. So when I got started investing in microcaps, that's something I wasn't doing. So I would read online message boards, and every time someone would talk about a company that seems interesting, I would go out and buy it without doing proper research. And so yeah, basically after losing money, I learned, and now I make sure that I understand everything that I invest in, and I do a lot of research, usually tens of hours of research before buying into a stock. And the last thing I would give as an advice is to always learn. So that's something that worked very well for me during my life. So always look for ways to improve. Can be by reading books or speaking with people who are more experienced than yourself. So yeah, I think learning is very important.
And Bobby, my advice, my own personal advice. So no, I'm not reading Matthew's notes. So yeah, for me, I think it's important to, in the micro cap space at least, to stay connected with other investors and companies and knowing what's happening in the space. But I think the most important advice I could give to new microcap investors is to try to keep an independent mind. I mean, there are so many strategies that work out there. Our strategy, Mathieu and I, isn't necessarily the best strategy, but it's the best strategy for us. So new investors have to find what works for them. What do they like? First, it needs to be a strategy that motivates you to go the extra step, to work more and do the research, due diligence you need to do for your strategy to work. So it has to be a strategy that you like, that motivates you, but also that works for you. So for us, it's investing in growth value microcap. For others, it could be day trading. It's really a matter of like what you like and what you want to do, and just learn and try to be the best at it.
So guys, where can my audience go and find more information about you and some of your investment philosophies that you've put out there?
Yeah, sure. So we have a website that's called Space Microcaps. So the website is eSpace. I'll spell it ESPACEMC.com. We are also on Facebook and Twitter. So Facebook eSpace Microcaps, and Twitter it's eSpace MC, like the website. And also, if you want to learn more about the investment fund, it's on Rivemont's website. So it's RIVEMONT.ca. And if you look at the list of funds, the microcap fund is there.
So guys, I want to thank you both so much for joining me today, and I'll see you soon in Vegas.
Yeah, we look forward to it.
Yeah, see you in Vegas, Bobby.
All right.
Thanks,
see you
Bobby.
Guys. Bye. Thank you all for tuning in to the Planet Microcap podcast, and thank you, Mathieu and Philippe, again for coming on to the program. You can access the podcast by going on to stocknewsnow.com under podcast, go to podbean.com and search Planet Microcap Podcast, or on iTunes and search Planet Microcap Podcast. Stay tuned for the next Planet Microcap podcast, where we'll have our next guest to discuss all things microcap. If you have any questions or comments about the podcast, please send an email to info@snnwire.com. I'd love to hear from all of you. This podcast has been brought to you by SNN Incorporated, publishers of StockNewsNow.com, the official microcap news source, and the Microcap Review magazine. I'm your host, Robert Kraft, and thank you again for joining me on the Planet Microcap podcast. Have a great week, everyone.